James Day, public television pioneer and chairman of the CUNY TV Advisory Board, passed away in April 2008. His legacy includes the series Day at Night, which aired for 130 episodes beginning in 1973. The program features interviews with many of the great thinkers and achievers of the 20th century. These 30-year-old programs have been restored. The interviews remain fresh and relevant today, exploring issues that are still important to society. Showing them again is CUNY TV's tribute to Jim and his contributions to public television.
If her defeat of Bobby Riggs in the most highly publicized tennis or any year made the name of Billie Jean King a household word, it should be noted that her name and fame had long since been well established in the tennis world, where twice in 2 years she walked away with a women's crown at both Wimbledon and Forest Hills, the top competitions in tennis. Not bad for a youngster from Long Beach with no particular advantages, except her uncommon speed and reflexes and an extraordinarily competitive spirit. But if they've sent her to the top of her field, it hasn't been easy. Billie Jean King has fought every inch and dollar of the way, treading on some sensitive toes in the process, but emerging as the biggest money earner in the young field of women's professional tennis. Her own way of proving the point that women have the right to equal treatment in a game long dominated by men. Billie Jean, you've been described by at least one writer as an angry woman, and I dare say that there are some people who probably think of you that way. I've known you for all of 10 minutes now, and I can hardly think of you as an angry woman. Are you an angry woman? Are you angry about some things?
Certain things, but I think everyone is. But
what are you angry about?
I'm not really angry about too many things anymore. I think in the old days when I was playing as an amateur tennis player, I was upset with the way the system was run, and I very much wanted to see a professional side to the sport.
I can't think of the old days in the same way in which I'm sure you're thinking of the old days, because it wasn't so many years ago that you began playing tennis in Long Beach. But you didn't come from a tennis-playing family, I understand. Neither your father nor your mother played tennis.
No, nobody played in my family. I just happened to get into tennis at the public parks in Long Beach through the recreation department program. They gave free group lessons, and I started practicing there.
Well, the story is that you started off in softball.
Yeah, I played softball, touch football, not tackle, basketball. My dad's a sports nut, and
he is.
My little brother and I. Well,
so sports was a part of the family, even though tennis wasn't.
Very much. I loved it, but it got to the point where I was about 11.
Were you something of a tomboy?
Yes, very much.
Are you?
Oh, sure. It's fun. It's fun. A lot of girls would be playing a lot more sports if people would accept them better in society, because it's generally, if a woman decides to go into sports, it's a no-no and it's a negative approach. And
why?
Because it means you're masculine, it means you're aggressive, all those things that people connotate with not being a woman or a lady, and that's finally changing. People are starting to say, look, it's beautiful. You get in shape, you have a better life, and people in general are accepting women as athletes, and peers are starting to accept each other. Generally for a boy it's a great thing to be an athlete, but for a girl it wasn't really accepted. But now
other girls don't really look up to her and admire because she's an athlete, as they do with boys, I suppose. Exactly,
but that's finally changing. Now girls are starting to identify with women athletes.
Why? What's brought about that change? Billie Jean King, I suppose, for one.
Well, you know, Billie Jean King's been around a long time, but in order to get the proper recognition, we needed a vehicle in which to perform. And thanks to Gladys Hellman and some of the other players, in 1970, Virginia Slims started a circuit for us.
Yes, I want to ask you more about that later, but when you speak of the importance of being feminine. It's been written about you that you took up tennis in preference to softball and so forth because it was more feminine.
That comes from my family upbringing. My mother has always said, be a lady at all times. Whatever that means, I haven't quite decided.
You don't really know, in your own sense, that is, what feminine...
I think we should get rid of the words feminine and masculine.
Do you?
Certainly should. I think we should, because too often it makes children try to act a certain way instead of feeling and doing what really is right for them. And it just kills me to see some girls be passive when in reality they're not a passive person. And also, what happens to the boy who isn't a super jock, who doesn't go out and run, a 100-yard dash in X amount of seconds, and he likes to sit home and read, or he likes to sit home and cook. Now, that's when the family gets uptight and they start yelling at him. So I'm hoping that through, I call it the women's movement, women's liberation, that it's going to help both, not to stereotype people.
But you'd still obviously hope for a difference and a maintenance of a difference between masculine and feminine, even though there would be more gradations.
Well, if you can tell me exactly what equals masculine and what equals feminine, that'd be great.
Well, you wouldn't have us all be alike, I mean, in that respect.
Right, exactly. I don't want anyone to be alike. Let whatever you like doing. Like, I'm an aggressive tennis player. Some men are aggressive tennis players, some are not. And some women are not aggressive tennis players. But generally, when you think of an aggressive tennis player, you'd say, oh, she plays like a man. And that's, that's out the window, as far as I'm concerned.
What is important as a tennis player is that you play well.
Do your own thing. Playing tennis is part of your own personality. And I enjoy going to net and putting the volley away, which is a very aggressive shot. But that's what turns me on, and that's also what I do the best. So that's why I should be there.
You took up tennis at the age of 11. You say you played on the public courts. What was that break between playing on the public courts for recreation, I suppose, and starting on the ladder to world championships? Was it a spirit of competitiveness?
Well,
it's been said that you wanted to be a champion almost from the time you put a tennis racket in your hand. But those myths tend to grow up. Is that true?
No, that's very true. That is absolutely right on. I took my first tennis lesson out at Houghton Park in Long Beach through Clyde Walker, who was really a great inspiration to me, wonderful teacher. And I got in the car, and my mom picked me up from the lesson. I said, Mother, this is it. I found exactly what I'm going to do.
How did you know?
I just knew it. I knew the first time I dropped the ball and I hit it. I said, this is it. I love it. I just loved it. And I said, I want to be world's champion. Of course, when I said that, my mother goes, that's fine, dear, driving home. But I knew that I found what I wanted. But as I got into tennis and grew up in tennis, started playing in country clubs, realizing it was a very traditional sport, a very rich and only for whites, that just turned me off. And I didn't like that. And I can remember when I was 14 or 15 that I said to myself, if I can help change the sport to make it a better sport for everybody, why shouldn't everyone have the opportunity to have the same feelings I've had about this sport that I love so much? And the only way you can do it is by changing the system, make it available to the masses. And we need a professional side to it. So finally in 1968 we had open tennis. And if
this crusade, so to speak, began very early in your life. Then at 14 or 15 you had these strong feelings.
I did have strong feelings, but I didn't understand the feelings exactly until I got older and I was able to reflect and also realize, why I'd gotten this far along.
Well, you've told one reporter a story about your encounter with Perry Jones at the age, what was it, of 11?
That was my first tournament. I was 11.
He was a very powerful man in tennis, wasn't he?
Yes, he was. He was the president of the Southern California Tennis Association. And I played my first sanctioned tournament at the Los Angeles Tennis Club. And I had a pair of white shorts. I had to wear all white, which drove me crazy. I probably would have rather wear my cutoffs and t-shirt. But anyway, I had to do it. That was part of the traditional role. And Perry T looked at me and he said, that little girl cannot be in the photo with all the other players because she's not wearing a tennis dress.
That must have crushed an 11-year-old girl.
No, it crushed me because my mother was about 10 feet away and she'd sewn the shorts for me because we couldn't afford to buy them. And I thought to myself, well, that does it. I'm going to be the best in spite of him or anybody else because I love the sport, and it's just too bad it's only available to very, very few people.
To become the best obviously takes an enormous amount of work. Practice, hours and hours of practice, and I don't know, again, whether the stories are true, that that you spent hours and hours of practicing and walking and doing the things that you thought were necessary. And you had some good teachers along the way, too.
I had some great teachers along the way. Of course, I owe it mostly to Clyde Walker. And Alice Marble helped me for about 3 months. She was a great player. She was the world's champion in 1939, the same year Bobby Riggs was champion.
Right.
Right.
That many years ago.
Yeah, that many years ago. And I had Merv Rose help me down in Australia. I went down for 3 months when I started to really start playing full-time tennis. That's when I turned 21. Also Frank Brennan, who is in New Jersey, was very kind to me, he and his family. So, you know, it took a lot
how
of
much can
people.
a teacher teach you in tennis, and how much must be on your own? How much of it you have to teach yourself, so to speak?
Well, I think you learn through, you know, playing in tournaments and being under certain pressure
It's more than
situations.
technique, then.
Oh, it is. It's very, very heavily relies on your mentality. And at the higher level you go, more and more it depends on the mentality of you as a human
What do you
being.
mean by your mentality? I have a vague idea of playing a
Mental
little.
toughness, concentration.
What is concentration? How do you achieve concentration?
It's different for each person. For me, I try to block out everything around the court, and my whole world is just that tennis court.
You don't hear or see what goes on around you?
Well, sometimes, but you try not to as much as possible. And just concentrate and watching the ball, watch the ball. Always keep thinking positively, and picture yourself always being able to do something properly.
Why thinking positively?
Because if you think negatively, if you picture in your mind a double fault, say, or missing a point, I got news for you. You're going to do
You're gonna
exactly
do it.
that.
Yes. I've discovered that. That probably applies to lots of things in life besides tennis, doesn't it?
It does. It's why it's a beautiful thing.
Do you carry it over into your life of thinking positively about things that you have to achieve?
Oh, I do. Very much. I'm very goal-oriented, and not just in tennis, in other areas in life. So for me, it makes me tick. For some people, I don't think it's right for them. They shouldn't go into a very high-level professional aspect of sports. They should just play it for fun and games, and that's what most people are going to do. But we, as a professional athlete, motivates people to enjoy tennis or enjoy whatever sport you happen to be involved in. That's what the professional does. Also, identification. Other human beings can, you know, identify.
That is important.
That is important, very much, especially
We need our heroes.
with young people, especially for young girls. They've always had to look up to male athletes in the past, and for the first time in years, they can start looking up to various women athletes, like the Ova Corbett helped a tremendous amount. Chris Everett's helped a tremendous amount.
What brought about this change? People like yourself fighting for the change? Or was there a change outside the sports world, for example, that made it easier for this kind of identification?
No, I think it was due basically to the women themselves. There were a few of us, along with Gladys Hellman, who really helped the most too. We needed a vehicle, like I said before earlier. You've got to have a place to display your talents, and we never had that in the amateur days. As a professional, you can practice and make your living out of it, and that's what is the top level you can go to. But young girls need to know where they can go, and that's what we can help them see. You know, this is the highest standard possible, and it's a beautiful thing. And when the money came into the game, people started to notice me and the other women, and the reason for this is that money is a measuring stick. Whether you work in a factory, whether you're a school teacher or whatever, at least you can relate. You say to yourself, I make $200 a week, and here this woman's making $10,000 a week. Oh, I think I'll go watch it. I wonder why they make so much money.
Yes, I've got another wonderful quotation from you that says 100 grand is the way to the American consciousness.
It is.
Recognition, and that money has made you a star.
It has
It
helped.
was rather controversial when you turned pro, was it not?
Yeah, I've turned pro.
Why should that be a controversy?
Because tennis is that tradition, and oh, you don't love it if you play for money, and that's a lot of baloney. You know, it means
Well,
that
one thinks of the amateur as one who plays for love, and the pro as one who plays for money, and somehow they're exclusive.
yeah,
you don't
that's
think they are.
no. Okay, this is another thing I would hope that would change in all areas of sports. That sports is part of life, and we've always tried to separate sports from life, like you say, making it very pure and making it up there. Well, if we do it that way, it'll only be open to very independently wealthy people, Because when you get a child who wants to become a champion, to be a champion you've got to travel. To travel you need money. And when they can make it on their own, through the money they win, they have so much more self-respect in themselves and not being obligated to others. That's a terrible feeling to an amateur athlete. And I got paid under the table, and that was very degrading to me.
It is degrading, isn't it?
It is. Other artists in music or whatever get paid, and they get paid out front, and that's beautiful. And the public has a right to know, because without the public we wouldn't be.
I suppose even the white dress, in a sense, has an association with keeping it pure, is it not?
Probably, but I don't know if you realize, but no one's wearing all white anymore. We're wearing all different types of colors. I have blue tennis shoes, none of this color, you know, all the different colors are beautiful.
And that's a very recent change, isn't it?
Yes. Well, you're right, it is recent, but I've been for that for about 10 years.
You'd make other changes in tennis. You've said the game is caught up in tradition, trivia, and etiquette, when all that it really matters is the caliber of play. You think a lot of it is nonsense, I gather, and that it could be changed without any real damage to the sport itself.
Oh, it'll enhance the sport. And
how will it enhance it, and what sort of changes would you suggest?
First of all, I'd like to see more crowd participation.
You mean booing and cheering?
Oh, right on. That's great, because...
Wouldn't that break your concentration?
No, no. It's all what you're brought up with. If you're brought up that way, like golfers are brought up in that environment, and it hurts them too in the long run.
Would it make you feel better?
I love it, because I like emotional involvement. I like to communicate and share with the audience there. And anybody that pays their hard-earned money at the end of the week or during the week that wants to come and watch us has a right to let it all hang out, so to speak. You know, and it's no good when they have to sit on their hands. You know,
well,
they can't enjoy it.
Wouldn't booing break that positive attitude you have toward?
No, if you're having a bad day and you're playing El Stinko tennis, they're going to say, boo, you're playing badly.
Yeah.
But you know it, but at least you know they're there and they're not indifferent to you. And as an amateur athlete, people are very indifferent to tennis. They're very indifferent to me. They're indifferent to the men tennis players. And it's not a good feeling, because we are an artist and we like to perform.
You are a performing artist. You view tennis not as something beyond simply the participating sport, but
oh, definitely.
as a spectacle, so to speak.
We're entertainers.
Yeah.
We hope that we can share a few moments of happiness, whatever, fun for people. And if you can't do that, then you miss the whole point.
What other changes would you make in tennis?
Well, the changes are starting to happen.
Oh.
And professional people are starting to run the game. For instance, we have a Women's Tennis Association now, and so the women, there's about 80 members at this point in time. And because of that vehicle, we're going to have some control over our own destiny. We're starting to make up our own rules.
Which is the reason for the association, to have that kind of leverage, to make the changes,
Exactly.
is that right? It isn't to keep the game separate from the
No, it's to help the game. It's to help us to communicate with associations, to help communicate with sponsors, because sponsors are putting more and more dollars into the game. We owe a lot more to them, you know, and they've stood behind us through the kind of what I call lean years, and now things are starting to, you know, break wide open.
And this is where Virginia Slims came in with the women's tournament that gave you the leverage to boycott the men's tournaments and finally force upon them equal pay, or at least reasonable pay for your performance.
Well, we just got equal pay at the U.S. Open, September 1973, and thanks to Billy Talbert and many people who believed in women's tennis, went ahead and did it, so we're very happy.
It's an ethical question with you to associate yourself with that in a leadership role, as a matter of fact, when you yourself don't smoke and probably don't approve of smoking, as a matter of fact.
No, I don't believe in smoking, but as any athlete will tell you, we do not choose the sponsors.
Yes.
And I am grateful to Virginia Slims for being there when we needed them. Also, they never encourage us to encourage smoking. For instance, at one time, we were going to have a tournament in a high school gym, and Virginia Slim spoke right up and said, no, we're not. It's high school children. We don't want them to smoke. Let's go someplace else. And I thought that was a pretty good decision on their part.
Billie Jean, there's been a tremendous upsurge of interest in tennis, as you know. Anyone who tries to play the game as an amateur the way I do and can't get on a tennis court knows that. How do you account for this new interest in tennis?
I really think it's because of open tennis in 1968. If you look at when we had the upsurge of participation at all levels, that's when it started. And that's
that you can go to the you can go to the top when you walk on the court, so to speak.
People identify as professional sports in this country. we're the one, like I said, we're the motivators. They got turned on to it. They saw that it was fun. They saw that it was a family sport. Both men and women can play. Children can play. Older people can play. Anybody can play. It could be a slow pace or a fast pace.
Yeah.
And it's really a beautiful sport, but they needed someone, someplace playing it so they could see it. We needed television. Without television, sports don't make it anymore. So television
kind of establishes its the fact that it's there, even to have
right.
it on
Well, we
television.
go into every little front room, you know, of in Iowa, Midwest, who've never seen tennis in their lives. So it's pretty nice.
How do you feel about money? You set out, of course, to be the biggest money earner in women's tennis and made it with 2 years with over $100,000. And you've said earlier that that's really a means of establishing women's tennis. But is money an important thing to you, other than as a symbol for the kind of power to achieve the things you want to see achieved, the changes you want to see brought about?
Probably not. I think basically it's a principal situation. Money, and it's fun to have it.
Sure. It's
I
better than not having it, isn't it?
It certainly is. And I really wanted to be the first woman athlete to make $100,000, just because I thought it would be a milestone that would help us to start receiving the proper recognition. And I hope that it will carry over into other sports, not
It's
just
a silly
tennis.
question, but is all this money, relatively speaking, brought problems as well as satisfactions?
There are some problems. You
There
know,
are?
the problem is that I have too many choices and too many decisions to make now.
Isn't that typical of much of America, that is the more affluent part of America? Really too many choices to make.
Well, the important thing is I keep my life basically the same way as I always have, and I really believe in that. I still don't like to shop. I really haven't changed my lifestyle that much, except through having to travel more or whatever.
Well, America has changed your lifestyle somewhat because you're obviously very famous now, and this must mean that you put some premium upon privacy. It must be more, isn't it more difficult to achieve nowadays?
Boy, do I. I love my privacy. I've never been big on being around big groups of people at one time. I like a few close friends.
You do hunger for it from time
I do
to
very
time,
much.
and-
I like to be by myself more and more. Sometimes it makes me get nervous because sometimes I think I'm going to live the next few years in a hotel room and have only room service. And I don't like that because I like to get out and I like to know what's going on out there and hear from people and get a lot of input. Because of what's happened, I do feel a greater responsibility, you know, because young people are asking me a lot of questions and sometimes I'm really not sure how to answer them. But so I have to hear from them. I have to know what's going on inside of them.
Is there a kind of emotional backlash after a thing like the Bobby Riggs match with all that tremendous build-up, all the excitement of the match itself, and then when you get alone in the privacy you seek, is there a letdown after all that excitement?
Very much.
How do you handle it?
Well, first of all, you get psyched up for 6 weeks straight, 24 hours a day. Everyone reminds you, hey, what do you think about Bobby? What's this? He said that any man can beat any woman, you know, and they keep going. Well, after it's over, you're completely emotionally exhausted, physically exhausted, and it takes you probably 2 or 3 weeks to recover.
How do you recover? Just rest? Or
You try
have
to
to kind
rest.
of build up mentally again?
Yeah, you do, but I didn't really get that much rest because of that match. There's more interest. And because there's more interest, there's more things to do. So I don't really, you know, I haven't rested since.
You've said that one of the wonderful things about tennis is you can play it at any age, but you can't play championship tennis at any age. There comes a point, I have no idea where it is. You're beyond 30 now. What do you see in the future as far as tennis is concerned? How will you build your life around tennis, or one day will you walk off the court and say, that's it?
I've thought a lot about it. I've had 2 knee operations. I know what it is to be physically disabled trying to play. I think when my performance level drops too much, that I'm sure I'm going to have to quit. I'm a perfectionist. I hate to lose. But there's so many other things I can do in tennis. For instance, I can work with the Women's Tennis Association. Larry, my husband, and I are starting a women's sports magazine, which is very, very important to me because women have never had their own sports publication just for them.
Again, as a means of giving this self-identification to women within sports?
Right, and to communicate. We don't have very many vehicles to really talk to each other. I haven't really met that many other women athletes, and I'd love to and talk to them because the male athletes do. I've met more male athletes than women athletes. And this will be a way to start communicating and sharing ideas. Also let the world know what we're thinking as people. I think it'll be really beautiful. So that's going to take a lot of work, you know.
Is there anything inconsistent with your notion of tennis and what tennis is and the kind of what one writer described as the bread and circus of a Bobby Riggs match, for example, with all a kind of a carnival atmosphere? Is that carrying it too far in the opposite direction, or do you think that because it is a spectacle and you're a professional, a performer, that that's perfectly legitimate within tennis?
I think it was legitimate. I do feel that it's a one-shot deal. I don't think you could be doing it every 2 months. That's when the tournament circuit, and now we have a world team tennis where the team concept is coming in to its own being, which I think is beautiful because the American psychic is into that. It'll create more vehicles for young players to make a name for themselves locally as well as nationally. There'll be city identification.
And yet you don't believe in national identification in the Olympics, for example, as nationalism.
No, I don't.
You prefer to have
I don't like the way the
athletes-
Olympics is run. I really think it's a farce.
But you
put it
prefer to have
mildly.
athletes perform as individuals rather than as representatives of their country.
Yes, truly I would, because they're exploiting the athlete in the Olympics. At least when I play team tennis in Philadelphia, I'll be a part of the community. I'm also have a nice contract with them, which I can put away for security in old age. The city identification is much different than when you go in the Olympics. And when there's under the tables payments, then you get into your Iron Curtain countries, which are really the most professional countries in the world. They're subsidized by their governments. They have chauffeurs. They give the athletes their home to live in. They give the parents a home to live in. And we're not even, let's tell the truth, you know, like really. The Olympics should be open to everybody.
Yes.
It's not right. Mr. Brundage did not help the world of athletics at all. He made it into a myth. It's not true. And it's not fair to the athletes, especially in track and field. That's the one sport that I'd love to see make it in a very big way.
Billie Jean, so seldom does a person like yourself who's kind of gone up against tradition and made it easier for those who follow ever become a hero in their own time, or even get a word of thanks in their own time. Does this bother you?
No, because a lot of people have already thanked me.
They have?
Yes, and I'll tell you, it's really what I want to do. If you go out to do something, it's because you want to do it, not what you expect in return for doing it. And the day that you expect people to give back to you for what you've given, then you haven't given in the first place.
And you've gotten already an enormous satisfaction for what has been achieved and what you know will be achieved in the next few years.
It makes me so happy to see what's going on.
Do you feel free?
Yes, I do.
And that's part, I suspect, of why you feel free, is you've seen some of these things become reality.
It's great. And to see the younger players, they're so much happier. You can't believe it. They have so much more self-respect in themselves. And they can see where they can go now. It's really beautiful.
Thank you very much, Billie Jean King.
Thanks, Jim.